Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're going to recap this week in cannabis news from October 11th to the 17th. So before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. And there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you're ready. We start with this timely update on Friday from Tom Angel as the Attorney General Merrick Garland is set to appear before the House Judiciary Committee on Thursday, one day after key senators asked him to reply to a letter pushing for federal cannabis decriminalization. So they asked for a response by October 20th. Apparently he's going to be stepping in front of the House Judiciary Committee to speak to them on October 21st. So the panel passed a legalization bill last month and has many members likely to ask about cannabis. And I think this is obviously a big deal to highlight because if the Attorney General responds positively about starting the process, this is the victory that the Dems have wanted, getting social equity, and that gives us reason to believe that Schumer can keep safe in the NDAA. And although he has said that he is in agreement with other senators to take it out, that was before Booker himself and Elizabeth Warren asked the DOJ and the Attorney General to consider starting the decriminalization process. And I've been thinking a lot about why they would send that letter to the Department of Justice and the Attorney General now as opposed to earlier on in the year. And what makes the most sense to me is because they need to get the social equity ball rolling now themselves, because they just do not have the votes in the Senate to add any sort of social equity to the NDAA or to pass CAOA in any form. So this is how the Dems can stick to their social equity pledge and say that they started the decriminalization process while also appeasing to the pressure that's been put on them to get safe banking passed. So this is a big week ahead, not even for the cannabis industry, because we know that they're going to keep executing, but for the Democrats, are they going to take advantage of another golden opportunity to make incremental progress? Or are they going to shoot themselves in the foot? So I did want to share this clip from Zach McCollum, and this was from a Twitter Spaces last month on legalization, or on legislation, but this is with Boris Jordan. So I just wanted to give him the spotlight and let him give us a pep talk to prepare us for this week, because it's a lot of good insight in here. We got to just breathe and let the process take its course.
Let me address the Cory Booker issue, because you guys have all been talking about it, and everybody slams them and slams Schumer and everybody. Listen, these guys told everybody up front, this ain't happening until next April. So I'm not sure why everybody thinks it should have happened in September, it should happen in October, it should happen in November. They said openly, it's not going to happen until next year.
Lesson learned.
So I think everybody's just got to sit down. They're doing their jobs, guys. There's a lot of stuff happening in D.C. Trust me, a lot. And I know that naysayers are saying it's all bullshit. So there's nobody closer to this than Trulieve. We have the largest lobbying operation, and we spend more time. And I actually speak to these people personally on the phone. I'm not guaranteeing anything. I'm just saying there's a lot of work going on. And it's good, healthy work. There's more and more Republicans every day that are being convinced that we need to do this. There's a lot going on. So let the process take its course and let it work out. Let's not rush it. We want to do this right. We don't want to get a law that then, like the CBD thing that we got, the farm bill that bankrupted half the industry. That's something I'm adamantly against. I want to make sure that if we get something, it works for the industry, first and foremost, because stock prices, they always catch up to the industry. But if they come out with a law that screws the industry, now then everybody's going to lose on that. So I just wanted to make a statement. Everybody's just got to calm down. It's going to happen, and it's just going to take a little bit of time to get through. We're all working on it. The senators are working on it. Their staff are working on it. Our lobbying organizations are working on it. Even the Koch brothers, one of the most conservative groups in the country, are working on it. There's a lot of pressure in D.C. There's also a lot of other stuff that's going on that is maybe, a bit more of a priority, but they will get to this. This is going to happen. And I think it may happen sooner than people think. So just give it a little bit of time and let people.
So best thing we can do is plan accordingly. On to news. As Nevada sold more than $1 billion in cannabis in the last year, officials report from Marijuana Moment. The Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board, CCB, and the Nevada Department of Taxation released the data which shows over $1 billion in taxable cannabis purchases in fiscal year 2021, which ran from July 2020 to June 30th, 2021. And this is, of course, medical sales combined with adult use recreational. By contrast, total cannabis sales for the prior 2020 fiscal year amounted to just $685 million. So that is impressive out of Nevada. The bulk of the cannabis purchases, $791 million, came from Clark County, where Las Vegas is located. Another $135.3 of cannabis was sold in Washoe County, with Reno being the major city in the jurisdiction. And the other $77 million remainder came from other counties. And 10% of tax revenue from recreational cannabis sales will support public education funding as prescribed under the bill that Steve Sisolak previously signed. So that's very positive, as more tax revenue means more money invested in public education, a big win for Nevada. On to New Jersey, as on Friday, the CRC finally announced the cultivation and vertical winners in the 2019 medical cannabis applications. So although this is long overdue to be handing these out, it is in line with them getting the market in New Jersey launched by February 15th, which is the deadline, the 180-day deadline from when the CRC met and got together in August. So the cultivation winners are listed right here. You can take a look, and then the vertical winners are here. However, no publicly traded MSO did end up winning. So although that's unfortunate for us as investors, it's better for those on the ground looking for opportunity in New Jersey. And because of that, I wanted to highlight this tweet from Christopher Norman. He highlights all of the businesses given licenses Friday are certified minority or women-owned, Brown said. No publicly traded MSOs. But again, I think that's a good thing in our hopes of getting Safe Pass sooner than later, because with New Jersey's emphasis of awarding cannabis licenses to social equity applicants only yesterday, the pressure increases on Senator Schumer and Senator Booker to get something done legislatively to provide something in the way of financial oxygen to backstop success, whether it's safe banking or more. Because as we've heard, any entrepreneur that gets a loan at 30% or 40%, that's not sustainable. You are not able to create a functioning business over time if you're paying that much interest on the money that you're given. So this is why they need SAFE. And again, reason to believe that's why the letter was sent, to get the ball rolling on the decriminalization process so that SAFE can stay in the NDAA, so that everyone in New Jersey and all other social equity applicants can benefit. So the hope is that that is what happens. On to this one from Pennsylvania, as bipartisan bill calls for legalizing recreational cannabis in Pennsylvania. And on Wednesday, I talked about Senator Mike Regan, who's a Republican in Pennsylvania, planning to file a bill in December. Well, some senators in Pennsylvania already beat him to it. As for the first time ever, there's a bipartisan bill to legalize recreational cannabis for adults in Pennsylvania. And legalizing cannabis for recreational use has long been an issue pushed by Pennsylvania Democrats, but having a Republican on board could significantly help the bill become law because Republicans control the state House and Senate. The bill is sponsored by Democrat Senator Sharif Street and Republican Senator Dan Laughlin. And so the senators propose making an adult use recreational marijuana program in Pennsylvania, setting up the industry, allowing licensed farmers across the state to grow cannabis, regulating the drug, and potentially collecting hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue from the legal sale of cannabis, which again, a lot of positive things for Pennsylvania. Good solution to a lot of states' problems right now. On to this from the Tampa Bay Times, as Crist says he'd legalize cannabis and expunge records as governor. So apparently, as part of his platform focused on equality for Floridians of color, Charlie Crist announced Thursday that he would legalize cannabis and expunge criminal records for those arrested on misdemeanors or third-degree felonies related to the drug if he were elected governor next year. And at the Florida Capitol, Chris said revenue from the state cannabis sales would pay for police agencies, drug treatment and diversion programs, and teachers. And his opposition, Nikki Fried, Chris' opponent in the Democratic primary and a former cannabis lobbyist, has previously called for legalization and expunging prior criminal records. She's been open about her medical cannabis use, and this September, as Agriculture Commissioner, she called on the U.S. Senate to end federal cannabis prohibition. She has financial ties to the industry with about $130,000 investment in licensed medical cannabis treatment center in Florida, which should be totally legal as long as she discloses it, which is totally fine. But so the winner of the Democrats, whether it's Crist or Fried, will face Governor Ron DeSantis in 2019. DeSantis said of cannabis legalization, not while I'm governor, according to the WJHG. So the Democrat seems to be for cannabis legalization. So whoever they vote in does have a shot at replacing Ron DeSantis and making legalization or legal adult use cannabis a reality in Florida sooner than later. On to this from the Office of Medical Cannabis Use. We highlight the last week in Florida did add 2,100 patients for a total of 624,000. So the growth has slowed a little bit there, but still continued, which is good to see. As we can see, Trulieve opened a new store in Cutler Bay, and MedMen opened a new location in Tallahassee. Well, if we scroll down to see the milligrams of THC sold, milligrams of CBD, and ounces of smokable flower, the sales have settled down from the last few weeks when Harvest was closing and selling everything in their store for 80% off, which obviously would hurt the margins of Trulieve, but it seems like they're back to normal, and numbers have settled down a little bit, but still consistent and still strong, and we can see the breakdown of all the MSOs and the amount of stores that they have here. On to this though, Trulieve has announced a week of dispensary reopenings across Florida, and this was last week, so just to show that they've not slowed down at all. Wednesday, October 13th, they opened the new Trulieve Jacksonville dispensary. On October 14th, they opened the Gainesville one. On October 15th, they opened the Kissimmee one, and then on the Monday, October 18th, which is tomorrow, they're going to reopen the West Palm Beach. All of these were formerly Harvest Health Harvest Health of Cannabis. Now they are becoming Trulieve. So just goes to show that they are not stopping. They are continuing to execute and capitalize. And on top of that, they are announcing they will hold their third quarter 2021 earnings conference call on November 15th, 2021. So as we saw, most MSOs on the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, or no, the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. That is the first week, with Curaleaf starting on the 8th, I believe. Then we've got Trulieve starting the following week on the 15th. So we do look forward to seeing what these earnings are, especially as Trulieve is now the largest combined MSO post-Harvest merger. On to this news from Green Thumb Industries as they announce their inaugural recipients of the Good Green Grants. And we love to see this because not many companies have initiatives like this, and a lot more should, because it's more or less just helping right their past wrongs, and cannabis companies are taking the lead, as today they announced the first group of nonprofit organizations to receive funding as part of its Good Green Grant program. Good Green is the company's newest flower brand, delivering a high-quality, affordable product that gives back to communities disproportionately affected by the war on drugs. And each organization selected fits one of Good Green's core pillars: education, employment, and expungement. The three recipients received unrestricted grants of $750,000 that will be used to advance each organization's missions. And the initial beneficiaries are Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, Innovation Works Baltimore, and Why Not Prosper Philadelphia. While Green Thumb opened its first round of Good Green grant applications in July and proactively committed at least $1.3 million in funding over the next year and a half ahead of product sales. The program's second round of applications is open to local 501c3 organizations through January 3rd, 2022. So for more information on their nonprofit application process, you can check out this link. But we love to see these companies that are changing the status quo for the better and righting the past wrongs. On to Cresco, as they plan to expand their leadership in Pennsylvania through the acquisition of a vertically integrated operator, Laurel Harvest. So let's take a look at the details. Laurel Harvest operational highlights. With this, approximately 52,000 square foot of indoor grow processing space and foundation for an additional 52,000 square foot of indoor cultivation space, one operational dispensary in Montgomeryville, a second dispensary in Scranton currently under construction, and ability to open an additional 4 dispensaries throughout the state. So about 6 dispensaries licenses, 1 open, 1 under construction, 4 that they have to pay for to open themselves, but then 100,000 square foot of cultivation space. We'll take a look at the price after. Well, the consideration is for a total of $80 million, so it seems like they got a good deal. We'll keep going through this. The Laurel Harvest clinical registration highlights 1 of 8 original Chapter 20 licenses in Pennsylvania. They also received academic clinical research partnership with Lewis Katz School of Medicine at Temple University, and 6 current ongoing cannabis research studies, while the Pennsylvania market highlights 5th most populous state in the entire U.S. with approximately 13 million people, a top medical cannabis market with over $1 billion in annualized retail sales, and according to data from Headset, Cresco is the #1 sold cannabis brand in the state in Q3 of 2021, while we got to remember that recently these senators did just introduce a adult use legalization bill in Pennsylvania. So that would be positive if they can get traction on that, but the consideration for the transaction is $80 million plus earn-out amounts payable upon achievement of certain post-closing milestones. Seems like a very good deal to pay $80 million in order to get 100,000 square foot of cultivation so that they can sell their wholesale approach through their CPG while also getting licenses and active dispensaries. On to this from Columbia Care, launches legacy California cannabis brand Classix in 5 new markets across the U.S., and which marks the industry's widest multi-state flower brand launch in a single day, as they're happy to announce the expanded launch of Classix, a heritage California product brand in 5 additional markets: Arizona, Delaware, Illinois, Massachusetts, and New Jersey. So it's a timeless lifestyle brand that has built an amazing following in California. As the newest member of our national brand portfolio, we are so excited to bring another trusted, high-quality product to consumers across the country, said Jesse Channon, Chief Growth Officer of Columbia Care. And I think it's very cool packaging, at least, brings you back to the 90s. That's the era I was born in. If we scroll down, Classix products are now available in a number of the company's dispensaries, including the Cannabis and third-party partners in 6 markets that they are selling to. So good news as Columbia Care continues to execute. But I saved the biggest deal of the week for last as Canopy Growth announces plan to acquire Wana Brands, the #1 cannabis edibles brand in North America. And I think this is big and should not be overlooked because they're paying a hefty fee in order for the right to eventually buy Wana Brands, which gives us reason to believe that Canopy sees decriminalization on the horizon. And in their view, the transaction strengthens Canopy Growth's U.S. ecosystem and increases U.S. cannabis market exposure upon federal permissibility. But if we take a look at how much this actually costs them, the agreements are structured as 3 separate option agreements whereby Canopy Growth has a call option to acquire 100% of the membership interest in each Wana entity. As consideration for entering into the agreements, Canopy Growth will make an upfront cash payment in the aggregate amount of US dollars $297.5 million. So they're basically going to pay $300 million upfront for the right to acquire Wana if they get some sort of decriminalization, which is a big risk and not one worth taking if you don't think that you're going to get some sort of decriminalization. So maybe Canopy knows something we don't as well. Strategic benefits, if you wanted to pause to read them, you can take a look. But this is worth noting because, now, think about it. If Canopy does end up getting the decriminalization that they've been fighting for, then they become an MSO because they take over TerraSend, Acreage, and Wana Brands. So not to say that they haven't been executing as well. They have to be executing. They're spending their cash in order to set themselves up for success. But again, all this revolves around some form of decriminalization, and they probably wouldn't be making this deal if they didn't think that they were going to see that possibly by April, like Boris was talking about, if, all this pending DOJ, Attorney General is positive starting that decriminalization process. It all makes sense and follows that script. So on to more news from Marijuana Moment as impact of marijuana legalization on crime reduction is being underestimated. New study finds, this was interesting, studies have repeatedly identified an association between legalizing cannabis and reductions in crime, but the impact of the policy change is being significantly understated because of limitations in the research methodology, a new paper co-authored by a federal official asserts. Most studies looking at crime and cannabis rely on FBI data sourced from local police departments across the country, but reporting that data to the federal agency is entirely voluntary, leaving knowledge gaps that have been underplayed the extent to which legalizing medical cannabis reduces violent and property crime. That's according to researchers from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's USDA Economic Research Service and Appalachian State University, who published a working paper on their findings this month. Our results indicate that medical cannabis laws result in significant reductions in both violent and property crime rates, with larger effects in Mexican border states, they wrote. While these results for violent crime rates are consistent with previously reported evidence, we are the first paper to report such an effect on property crime as well. Moreover, the estimated effects of medical cannabis legalization on property crime rates are substantially larger, which is not surprising given property crimes are more prevalent. That, while the study specifies that the USDA officials' involvement in the study should not be construed to represent the government's position on the issue, it is notable that an agency representative even participated and effectively reached the conclusion that the theory that criminalizing drugs, as the federal government has done for decades, reduces crime seems to be unfounded. That, on top of other data, has similarly challenged the notion that prohibition reduces crime. We know this, and the data is in, but when is someone in the government going to have the balls to do something about it? While Sanjay Gupta explains his cannabis reversal and discusses very biased U.S. research in Joe Rogan, which is in line with the problem that was just talked about in the latest article, as CNN's chief medical correspondent Sanjay Gupta wasn't always on board with medical cannabis, but things changed when he looked for the science, he said during an interview on the Joe Rogan Experience on Wednesday. But to find the science that ultimately convinced him of the therapeutic potential of cannabis, he had to look intentionally because there seemed to be a very biased set of data in the US that focused almost exclusively on the potential harms rather than the benefits. If you're looking at papers, well, this one says there's potential long harm, this one says possible addiction, this one gateway, you're seeing all those individual studies, but at a broader level, one step upstream, you realize that most of these studies that are getting funded are designed to look for harm, Gupta said. So you can watch the video here if you want. When I saw that, it was the first time I thought, well, why are the studies that are getting out there, why are they all designed to look for harm? He said, then I started looking at other countries and some really good research out of places like Israel in particular. Scientists outside of the US were taking a different approach, investigating potential therapeutic applications for cannabis for conditions like pain and seizures. That, combined with Witnessing the measurable impact of cannabinoids for children with severe epilepsy changed Gupta's mind on the issue, and he took a bold step in 2013 of penning the article for CNN explaining why his perspective had shifted from being a cannabis skeptic to a supporter. So thank you, Sanjay Gupta, for having the courage to actually look at the data yourself and change your mind based on the new information, because yes, all of the studies have been designed to look for harm. And guess what? We have a century of studies funded by the US government that looked for the harms of cannabis. And why have you not heard of them? Because they couldn't find any harms. And that is another reason why I'm so confident that we're going to free this plant, because the plant just is so good at what it does, it speaks for itself. But let's go through some of these studies in the past. The first, the 1894 British Raj Commission. This 3,000-page, 7-volume classic report on the cannabis problem in India by the British concluded, viewing the subject generally, it may be added that moderate use of these drugs is the rule, and that the excessive use is comparatively exceptional. The moderate use produces practically no ill effects. Nothing of significance in the report's conclusions has been proven wrong in the intervening century. And if we take a look at the 1944, this one, the LaGuardia Committee report. This study is viewed by many experts as the best study of any drug viewed in its social, medical, and large legal context. The committee covered thousands of years of the history of cannabis and also made a detailed examination of conditions in New York City. Among its conclusions, the practice of smoking marijuana does not lead to addiction in the medical sense of the word, and the use of cannabis does not lead to morphine or heroin or cocaine addiction, and no effort is made to create a market for these narcotics by stimulating the practice of cannabis smoking. Finally, the publicity concerning the catastrophic effects of cannabis smoking in New York City is completely unfounded. And if we scroll a bit further, we can find one that was done out of Canada. Canadian Government Commission of Inquiry into the Non-Medical Use of Drugs, the Ledane Report. The distinguished Canadian experts on this government commission were led by law school dean, later Supreme Court Justice Gerald Ledane. The report was similar to other Great Commission reports in terms of its non-martial, calm approach to the facts and its belief that cannabis use did not constitute the great threat to the public welfare. The official government commission was remarkable in the extent to which its report portrayed casual drug users as decent, thoughtful citizens whose views deserved the fullest possible hearing by the government in the process of developing drug control strategies. A mother of 4 and a school teacher was quoted in the report saying, "When I smoke grass, I do it in the same social way that I take a glass of wine at dinner or have a drink at a party. I do not feel that it is one of the great and beautiful experiences of my life. I simply feel that it is pleasant, and I think it ought to be legalized." The commission did not ask for that change immediately, but instead recommended that serious consideration be given to legalization of personal possession in the near future. The report also urged that police and prosecutors go easy on casual users and keep them out of jail as often as possible. And then this one of the more recent, the 1972 marijuana, A Signal of Misunderstanding. This one came from Raymond P. Schaefer, who was working for the Nixon administration that introduced the Controlled Substances Act and started to criminalize drugs. This commission was directed by Raymond P. Schaefer, former Republican governor of Pennsylvania, and had 4 sitting elected politicians among its 11 members. The commission also had leading addiction scholars among its members, and staff was appointed by President Nixon in the midst of the drug war hysteria at the time. While the commission supported much existing policy, it produced 2 reflective reports, this being the final comprehensive document, which recommended research, experimentation, and humane compromise. The first recommendations of the commission were, number 1, possession of cannabis for personal use would no longer be an offense, but cannabis possessed in public would remain contraband subject to summary seizure and forfeiture, while number 2, casual distribution of small amounts of cannabis for no remuneration or insignificant remuneration not involving profit would no longer be an offense. The recommendations in this report were endorsed by, among others, the American Medical Association, the American Bar Association, the American Association for Public Health, the National Education Association, and the National Council of Churches. But guess what? Nixon didn't like the findings, so he did not allow it to become public. And so this is a great database of information if you've never seen it before, but it tells us what we already know. And if you did not know this, this may come as a surprise. But if you knew this, this helps you understand that the cannabis plant is not toxic to the human body. And again, highlighting why we're at a tipping point, because descheduling cannabis will allow us to fund research and studies that look at the therapeutic benefits, which will help right the past wrongs, and also allow us to figure out how good of a medicine this plant actually is. At the same time, we have the Attorney General about to talk on Thursday about whether he plans to, yes or no, start the descheduling process. So we are getting there, and we've never been closer. A few more stories. As voters across the U.S. will decide on marijuana and psychedelics ballot ballot measures next month. So this is an off-year election, but in Colorado, Detroit, Michigan, Ohio municipalities, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and in Virginia, voters do have a chance to make their voice heard on some issues, but I wanted to also use this to just highlight that looking ahead to 2022, activists are also hard at work trying to get drug policy reform on the ballot. So we have it out of South Dakota, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Ohio, Florida, New Hampshire, Maryland, Missouri, Arkansas, Idaho, North Dakota, Wyoming, and California. So you can pause to read here. I'm not going to read through all of them. It'll just take too long. But just goes to show the momentum is building, especially for 2022. So hey, if we thought 2021 would be the year, turns out it was the year for accumulating. And you want to be accumulating for 2022. Education, not advice, of course. And last few stories is Germany SPD health expert calls on next government to legalize cannabis. This comes as Social Democratic Party health expert Karl Lauterbach on Wednesday urged the SPD, Greens, and Free Democrats, hoping to form Germany's next government to legalize cannabis should they come to power. Speaking with Germany's Rheinischen Post, I don't know I'm even attempting that, Lauterbach said, I was against legalizing cannabis for years, but now as a doctor I've come to a different conclusion. Amazing, because he just had the courage to look at the data. The politician said his change of heart was prompted by the fact that police now report finding other substances mixed into cannabis. Interesting. Lauterbach said legalization would help protect consumers. This is why I'm in favor of formulating a new law on legal and controlled distribution of cannabis to adults should a coalition contract be signed with the Greens and FDP, Lauterbach told the newspaper. Now again, this is very early though, and there's no signs of this actually happening, but it's still positive sentiment towards cannabis. One thing I did want to highlight in here though, other critics include Heinz-Peter Meidinger, president of German Teachers Union, who told Germany newspapers network Redaction's network, oh gosh, terrible. The example of the Netherlands shows that legalizing soft drugs has led to a drastic uptick in the use of harder drugs. The line between soft drugs and hard drugs becomes blurred. Yeah, it becomes blurred when you consume alcohol, the gateway drug. So the fact that adults cannot acknowledge that, they put alcohol on the pedestal and they don't notice that as the gateway drug just blows my mind. But yes, the line between soft drugs and hard drugs does become blurred when you consume alcohol, and legalizing cannabis has nothing to do with people consuming harder drugs. It's alcohol. It's always been alcohol. And so lastly, just wanted to share this from a writer and fund manager, Aaron Idlehart, the Cannabis Manifesto, why he's going all in on a generational opportunity. This is, again, obviously highlighting what I've been covering over the entire year, but just want to read a snippet from his and leave it here if you wanted to read it or not. All the links from the stories will be below, but here is the snippet. Imagine an opportunity to invest in a mythical $100 billion market on its way to $200 billion, in which capital is scarce, institutional participation is tiny, and where many publicly traded companies involved are not listed on any major index or traded on any major exchanges, which is why it's wise to think of these investments as private investments, because we are in before institutions. That is rare. So just think of it that way, and you won't be worried about the share price of the day-to-day price action. Now imagine that these publicly traded companies have defensible moats, strong management teams, and possess 10 years of growth and reinvestment opportunities ahead. Then imagine that this magical sector has crazy inefficiencies where similar companies trade at wildly different value multiples, or different multiples for no apparent reason, and where you can buy industry-leading companies growing at over 50% while trading for single-digit cash flow multiples with little, if any, leverage. This is the reality of the U.S. cannabis industry. Thanks to the conflict between state legality and federal illegality, the U.S. company that touches the cannabis plant cannot trade on any major U.S. exchange and instead trades on secondary and tertiary Canadian exchanges. Add in concerns regarding custody issues from several major brokerages and prime brokers, and you were left with little institutional involvement, estimated at a measly 4%, no index involvement, and thus a wonderful opportunity. And that is, again, why this man is deciding to launch an ETF, or it's a cannabis fund, so I believe it's an ETF. Regardless, he wouldn't be launching this fund if he didn't see such an opportunity. So then this, again, is just more insight to add, although it highlights what we've been covering as to why this opportunity is so big. And realistically, you got to understand this. As the prices fall and the valuations fall, we may have bought in early, but this should not stop you from buying if you were convicted in this opportunity, because the lower the fall, the higher the eventual climb. And that is what makes this a generational investment opportunity. But again, this is education, not advice. If you don't believe this is going to happen, then don't invest. Simple as that. And if you've invested and you don't believe this is going to happen, then you can sell for a loss if you wish. But that's not how you make money investing. And if you have not been averaging down out of fear, that's okay. But just know that when the flip does switch, the only regret you're going to have is that you did not buy more. And that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments, and please let me know what you think might happen this week with the Attorney General. Do you think he's going to say, yes, we intend to start the descheduling process, or no, we don't intend to start the descheduling process? Let me know in the comments. But I hope you enjoyed this and got some value out of it. If you did and you learned something, please leave a like on it. Subscribe subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Wednesday for a midweek update. Have a great weekend, everybody.